Telecom continue to rule the world. Uzi goes godlike.
This is what peak League of Legends looks like.
Hello everyone and welcome back to MSI 2021 for the final day of the Rumble stage in Reykjavik, Iceland. While Damwon, Kia and RNG have already locked their spots in the knockout stage, today the Mad Lions, Cloud9 and PSG Talon will determine their fates as they race for a place in next weekend's matches. It is all on the line and I'm Sjokz, joined by Wolf and by Vedius. Hello Wolf, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to have my face up on the big screen and talk about some League of Legends with you guys.
Absolutely. I'm really excited that we have an LCK expert with us today. And I'm also very excited to announce that the MSI team is joining Riot and the LGBT plus community in celebrating Pride Month. Inclusive games mean a better experience for everyone. And while we can't march this year, we can certainly celebrate in-game. All of our games, including League and Valorant, will have Pride content such as emotes, player cards, and more. Equip your content and show your support for LGBT plus players everywhere. A lot of cool content. I can't wait actually to equip some of these skins in game. Maybe it'll make me play better. I don't think so though.
You can be optimistic, but it's definitely cool to represent and share that pride. It's
Yes.
going to be awesome. I'm excited to help support, and it's going to be a fun day to help support alongside with it.
Absolutely. Continuing on with our happy news, we've locked 2 teams to our knockout stage, Damwon, Kia, and RNG at the top of our standings. And Wolf, I think after, a bit of up and down performances, have you regained your faith in Damwon, Kia?
I mean, yesterday was a good day, right? But I won't lie to you guys. The casters out here, the LCK commentators, we all kind of been texting each other, looking at each other, a little bit worried about the first group stage. We were not very happy with Damwon Kia's performance, even though they are in a very good standing here in the Rumble stage. It's been very up and down. We did not see Damwon Kia perform as well as expectations were set here, especially on the Korean side of things. Even the Korean analysts here on our side of the ocean, are actually saying RNG was the best team until yesterday, I think. And we really saw Damwon Kia come back to form in their games yesterday. And I'm hoping that they're going to continue that today in their final day of matches for the Rumble stage.
Imagine that, Sjokz, having a 5-1 coming out of the initial group stage, securing semifinals and going, I'm a little disappointed, honestly, with their performance. Yeah, I'm sure the LEC will get to that point soon, especially when we look at Mad, who haven't had the most convincing performance here in the Rumble
Must be nice
stage.
for the LCK. For Mad, though, as you said already, middling Mad, I would say, looking mediocre. I would say sometimes even bad versus the top teams, but consistently smashing the teams below them at least.
I believe that Mad is performing at expectation. And I think that yesterday, while, yeah, fans are going to be disappointed that right now they're not really able to challenge the top 2 teams, I think that they have a current winning record against PSG Talon. And as you rightly said, they've sort of dominated everyone else beneath them. So the only question is, can they go up from here? And I'm optimistic that they can.
So you're thinking we've been too hard on Mad?
I think the fans have been way too hard on Mad, especially when we come into the tournament and everyone was like, yeah, Mad, 3rd, 4th, somewhere around there. That's kind of what I expect. And right now they're performing at that. So I don't see how people can be disappointed when those were our expectations of them.
Okay, well, a team that has impressed me very much so are the Kingslayers PSG Talon. Now, yesterday, a really rough day. They went 0-2, Wolf, but I think out of what we've seen of the other games from PSG, they are a big contender, maybe even in the best of 5s.
I mean, definitely so. I think this is a team that no one's really talking about right now compared to the big names in RNG and Damwon Kia as a potentially a team that could take the whole thing. They've kind of been overshadowed by RNG and Damwon Kia's legacy. They're defending world champions. But this team has shown that they can actually tango with the big teams. They've looked really good across both group stages and have really outperformed the Western teams. So I think this team actually, if they do qualify for those best of 5s, and it seems very likely they will, they might surprise some people.
I agree with you. Also, kind of the versatility, what we've seen in terms of picks and play styles out of them can be a very good asset in those best of 5s as they get there. But they're battling amongst Mad Lions, also Cloud9. Now, Cloud9 yesterday, they beat RNG, but now they border on elimination because they lost to Pentanet. Vedius, what do you make of it?
Well, I'm surprised that everyone's like really scared and disappointed, because if results had gone as expected and they actually lost RNG and beat Pentanet, they'd be in the exact same position. Personally, I'm really excited about Cloud9 just because they showcased that they can beat RNG and a formula with which to do it. So I'm optimistic. Of course, they have to go through the Mad Lions, and as an LEC rep, I'm afraid they're not going to be able to do that. So it was a good run, Cloud9. You tried your best.
Well,
Never give up hope. If you're a North American fan, I think that's kind of what you've been holding on to all these years, but never give up hope. There's still a chance they get out of the group. And I think at the end of the day, Cloud9 is a stronger team than what they've shown at this tournament. So I selfishly hope that if they don't make it through, that maybe they'll get another chance at Worlds.
We'll see, indeed. Now, Pentanet, of course, yesterday they beat Cloud9, and that's great. And I know it will be like, why are you being so excited about winning one single game? But if you look at the context, if you look at the LCO having to like start from scratch at the beginning of the year, if you look at the players going over to NA, this is just, it's poetic, Vedius.
It certainly is. I think that getting a win against one of the major regions, especially their first seed, is just big for any region, and especially for the LCO, especially when they lost so many of their players, and especially like Fudge being one of them, getting the opportunity to beat them in the way in which they did it. How can you not be happy with that level of performance?
They've just radiated good vibes. The whole thing. Also, I'm sorry, but your shoes are ruined.
Oh no.
Oh no. Anyway, so by the end of today, we will part ways with one of our three remaining teams in PSG, Talon, the Mad Lions, and Cloud9. Three teams who carry the hope of their region on their shoulders. Let's start with the Mad Lions, the European Kingslayers. They went through G2 rather, and they went through Rogue to make it here. But many question if they even deserve it. Well, of course they do. They invested in TCL talent in Armut and scouted one of the most promising rookies in Elyoya. It paid off in the LEC, but now it has to pay off at MSI. And so much of their chances of making it to the knockouts rests on the shoulders of the Spanish jungler. So Elyoya, it is time to roar. Standing right next to them are PSG Talon, a perfect storm of brilliance led bravely by Maple, the king of the LMS of Yonder, spending 2 uneventful years in the LPL, returning to claim his title in the PCS. Now, they had to bring a sub again. Their coach's tier list was memed to oblivion, but it does not matter. They could very well be the third best team at MSI, and they can show the world that today. And last but certainly not least, Cloud9, the most successful NA team at international events historically, who strengthened their lineup by importing the European GOAT Perks, eyes firmly set on international success. But what we got, it was more of the same. The NA special, beating the world champion and tournament favorite, but falling to Pentanet all the same. But nothing is lost, C9. If you enable Fudge, if you trust in Vulcan, and show what we know you can, the door to the knockouts is wide open. And then the sky, or should I say, the clouds, are the limit. However, yesterday we got a lot of hot and cold out of Cloud9, which means that they have to go 2-0 today to even force a tiebreaker, Vedius. And that duality of yesterday, that was a sight to see.
It certainly was. So let's talk a little bit more about it, because Cloud9, they went from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows. But what exactly happened and why? Let's start by talking about their draft versus RNG, because they seem to have found the formula for success. They had a pushing mid lane in the form of Zoe. This champion has risen in priority in MSI, and it is really important at not only getting priority in the early game, but then working with your jungler. On top of that, they got a winning 2 versus 2 matchup in bot lane. PSG popularized the answer of Leona into the Nautilus, and by early prioritizing the Kai'Sa, they were actually able to get themselves a strong 2v2 that had agency and playmaking power. They also got a playmaker in the top lane for Fudge with his Lee Sin, which he's only had fantastic performances throughout the tournament. And finally, they got the biggest early game powerhouse in the meta in Volibear for Blabber, and boy, did he do work on it in the early game. The fact that Cloud9 were able to find such a well-rounded draft and then enable it at every stage of play is why they were able to take down a powerhouse in the form of RNG. They found gank after gank in the early game after Blabber's creative pathing, and these ganks were paying off. It wasn't just in top, he immediately transitioned it over into mid, and they didn't stop here. They got Vulcan involved in the mix as well, and they return to the mid lane in order to set up for another kill after he immediately teleports back. Notice that we've got this all in a single roll because that's how quickly and efficient they were in actually executing and pulling off this play. The early game was strong, they transitioned it into a strong mid game, and they were able to snowball it at the end to close out a big win. So what was different in their series versus Pentanet? Well, notice, in the mid lane, yes, they can still get priority in this matchup, but it's not the same because the moment Victor has that push, he can answer it back. They have a losing 2 versus 2 bot lane matchup. They do not have a playmaker in the top lane. They have a weak side tank, and there's no agency in the jungle for Cloud9. For the first 15 minutes of the game, Cloud9 could not do anything. And the reality was that they were only going to get outscaled by the Senna-Victor combo, and Pentanet did not waste that opportunity. They used every fight, every opportunity, and they took it to Cloud9, and they outplayed them time and time again. It was close in a couple of instances for Cloud9, but unfortunately, it just wasn't quite enough. And the composition of Pentanet allowed them to come out on top, and they punished the mispositioning and poor execution that came out from Cloud9. What this to me shows is that Cloud9 have a clear way to victory. They have a clear path to success. Scaling, team fighting, that is not the strategy. Giving Blabber agency, giving them the opportunity to transition the early into mid game with an advantage is how this team can make the run happen today. But we're going to have to wait to find out before that happens. For now, we're going to find out our Icelandic fun fact of the day, and we're going to toss to me for some Hot Spring hype. Let's go!
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Hot Spring. Iceland is home to a number of lovely hot springs, but they are more than just what meets the eye. These Margaret! Please! Like, there's so much space here, come on! Leave a little distance, These geothermal hot springs are frequented for their therapeutic properties, reported to heal skin conditions like psoriasis, as well as healing the mind. Who needs to scrim when you can go for a swim? Margaret, seriously.
Margaret, she's cheeky in that hot tub.
So cheeky.
Wow. This is peak content, Wolf. Aren't you glad you joined some of the LC shenanigans?
No, I'm so happy to be a part of this. And when I got to see the Vedius head floating, I knew we were in for a treat.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, Vedius. Informative as always. Wish we could take a dip in those hot springs. But we're going to cool down a little bit with a little moment to chill and relax to a meta check-in because there's a lot afoot. Wolf, let me ask you first up, what have you most been, I guess, surprised by in the development of the meta up to this point?
I mean, I think a lot of people are talking about the jungle meta a lot, but for me, the biggest focus has definitely been on the supports. We're seeing Nautilus and Leona have a great amount of success right now, and I think it's really just about the potential that you have in terms of picks right now in this meta, and the supports are really dominating the initiation in team fights. You get a single stun or a hook, you catch somebody, you do massive damage, you blow somebody up. Works out with the AD carries that we have in the pool right now. Kai'Sa, for example, high mobility, Tristana, high mobility to follow up on those CCs.
I am a little surprised, though, that Thresh, you can see that he has a very high ban percentage, and his go-to answer is Nautilus, yet they ban it all the time.
Yeah.
You can see it's just so strange. If you have such a good answer to it, I'm surprised that so many teams just don't want to leave it open. But I think the main reason why is because of the safety and AD carry options that a champion like Thresh does open up. Things like Jinx, Aphelios suddenly become a lot stronger, especially when he is up and available, and many teams don't want to deal with it. And speaking of that, there are a lot of other AD carries that they clearly don't want to deal with in the form of the Varus, which we haven't really gotten to see at all because of his insanely high ban rates, which then leaves open the things like the Kai'Sa, which still seem to be running rampant in the current meta.
And it seems to be right in the wheelhouse of, for instance, RNG. We know that Gala loves Kai'Sa, but Damwon as well. They have preferred it, even when Tristana was valued a bit higher, Wolf. How do you read that?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen so much priority for Kai'Sa all year long for Damwon Kia, especially when they're on blue side. They would first pick it against a lot of different other champions, even when she was nerfed, right? And wasn't that meta in Korea for other teams. So I think it's the fact that you can follow up so easily. Ghost is such a great player at seeing blood in the water and finding those opportunities to come in with a killer instinct. And, you know, with the collector now added to the game, I think it's a lot easier to actually guarantee those kills with a champion like Kai'Sa. So you're seeing it a lot more.
I also think that a lot of other champions in the meta are about diving in. We look at Lee Sin top lane as a really good example. We also had like a lot of AP meta like Morgana, Rumble. They have really great setup for champions like Kai'Sa to be able to follow up on. So I think that she falls out of meta when you are playing those front-to-back team fight comps, but right now it's not actually about that. It's more about skirmishing, more about diving, and actually trying to get into those 2v2s, 3v3s, which a champion like Kai'Sa really finds a lot of success with.
And that has continued then in jungle meta, how we have seen that evolving. In the beginning, it was all about, ooh, Morgana or Rumble. They are both so oppressive. You should definitely go for those. But now we're seeing teams saying, yeah, you can actually have the Rumble and I'll take the Udyr. In fact, more and more teams are prioritizing the Udyr.
Yeah, it was quite surprising that champions like Morgana are now even being left up.
Yeah.
And people are saying, you know what, it's fine. We'll actually play the Udyr into it just because we think that the clear speed is too strong. We think that it offers too much in the game. When you think about the champion in and of itself, it just offers one stun, has a bit of damage, but it's so much more than that because of the clear speed, because of the early dueling power, because of the CC that he does offer. Like, there's so much that the champion just does that even after all the nerfs to Chem Tank and the champion himself, he still finds himself at the top of the jungle pool.
Yeah, and I think there we see a bit of a discrepancy maybe, because I think at least that junglers like Canyon also can do it all with someone like Rumble, because, you know, you need to be mechanically pretty proficient to always hit that ultimate or always hit the harpoons or whatnot. So I feel like they have a bit more flexibility because they can go for both, whilst in teams like Mad and Cloud9, we've seen that they just prefer the Udyr of the Volibear straight up. Wolf.
I mean, for me, I think I look at a player like Canyon, and while he has the flexibility, he has the options to go for a lot more junglers. He's liking picking the Udyr himself, even because the utility, as Vedius mentioned, is just so high. I mean, you can set up for ganks in lane, you know, because it's very easy if you have a mid laner that has a stun, for example, or a top laner has a stun. You can almost guarantee a kill anytime someone's overextended. But also the vision control that he gives you, for example, pairs extremely well with Zoe, which is a champion we've been seeing Showmaker pick up quite a bit, not only in the LCK, but now here in MSI. So the ability to clear wards safely because he can escape when he goes and do that, and he'll also just press Q and kill them so quickly, means that he's just so valuable in so many other scenarios than just team fights, that even though a champion like Rumble can blow somebody up and Morgana can set you up with a really nice long stun, I feel like Udyr is just too big to fail. And when you're a team that knows that people want to ban Rumble against you, want to ban the Morgana against you, it's very easy to sit back as Damwon and go, well, just take the utility of Udyr anyways.
I think what's really fascinating is that whenever we come to international tournaments, the meta shifts, right? And one of the big challenges for many teams is adapting to that shift and how dramatic it can be. G2 is a great example of a team last year at Worlds who the meta was completely against how they won the regular season, and they struggled coming into the tournament. And I think for a lot of teams, Damwon included, they too were trying to figure out what meta picks work for them. But now that Udyr has been identified as being strong, a lot of teams are actually going back to how they found success, and they're saying, we actually don't have to change as much as we thought because these meta shifts were not as dramatic. And so this Udyr rise has been strong for a lot of teams, but now other teams are starting to figure out Volibear can now be picked into it as well. And that's why, like, you were bringing this up earlier in the week, Sjokz. Why don't they just go back to playing what they were doing during the playoffs? And it's like, you're right. Now they're doing it. They're all doing exactly just that. Like, if you can pick Udyr, that's now weaker in theory than he was in playoffs, you can just pick the Volibear as well.
Indeed. I do also want to talk about the top lane, because it's all like intertwined, right? Because if you have an Udyr that can go top lane, there's a lot of interesting picks you can pick there. The Lee Sin priority we've seen, but also Renekton, which has been banned tons of times. What's going on there, Wolf?
Well, for me, I feel like Renekton, even though he's not seen as a top-tier champion by most people right now, I think that the threat that you have in the top lane, because he has the ability to basically just never lose lane, as a nice setup stun, he pairs so well with something like a Morgana, who can just come up and set up a root, and then you hit a stun, the root comes down, and you get a guaranteed kill so often. Also works well with Udyr, right? So very, very scary champion to deal with in terms of letting that lane get out of control if he pairs with another CC. So I think that's the main reason why players just don't want to deal with them right now.
Exactly. And I was going to say, oh, well, top lane is so exciting. We don't get Renekton and Gnar every game. But actually, it's been a lot of Lee Sin and not that much diversity.
Yeah, it feels like the top lane champion pool is actually a little rigid right now. The champions that you see on your screen are kind of what we get, and a lot of these are often banned away. I am hoping that we do get to see a little bit more. We've been seeing a lot of Nocturne and Set also kind of like hovering around. But right now, it feels like the top lane champion pool is very much, you need something that can not lose lane and have impact in team fights. And if you've got both of that, then you work as a top laner in the current meta.
Yeah, so just be a good player, basically.
Be a good player.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so looking ahead, we've got a number of all-important matchup on the last day of our Rumble stage. RNG and Dom1 at the top of the day. Of course, that rematch that RNG won the first time around. And then the battle of the wildest in the West. Cloud9 versus Mad Lions, which could very well be for all the marbles. Also, if Dom1 win this first game, they also lock #1 seed, which is very, very important because then you get to choose your opponent.
It certainly is, and I think that for Dom1 this is also a big deal because you think about how in the tournament the perspectives have been shifting, that RNG is currently the favorite, and I think that if Dom1 lock in that first seed, they can kind of cement themselves as the best team, especially seeing as their only loss is to RNG so far, so they've looked pretty convincing.
So RNG will be looking for another win versus Dom1, and yesterday Laure spoke with RNG's Cryin to catch his thoughts on his team's advancement to the knockout stage.
Cryin, thank you so much for joining me. Congrats on taking down PSG this time around. What was different from day one to day two, actually, and what did you work on to take them down this time?
首先，恭喜你们拿下了今天的这场对阵 PSG 的比赛嘛。那对比起昨天和今天的话，一个对比是什么样子呢？你们做了什么样的调整去战胜他们？
昨天可能我们的 BP， 然后前面的有一些思路就都有一些问题嘛，然后今天做的感觉是比较好一点。
So yesterday we had some problems in the pick and ban phase. Also, the game plan execution was not perfect, and we fixed on the problems we had of yesterday, then performed better today.
Yeah, we could see that today you came clutch in those team fights, especially in the mid to late game. And I want to ask, who calls the shots in this team fight? Is it the support, the engage tool, or more the damage dealer?
因为你们今天在中后期的这个团战其实是非常非常关键，也是把胜利拿到自己手里面了嘛。想问一下中后期这些团战的话，谁是主 call， 以及说一般是说辅助的话呢，还是说这个输出位？
在中后期的话，当我们处理完线，就是所有人看到有机会的话，是都会说，就是这波看一下能不能打的。
So as long as we clear the waves, everyone, whoever see the opportunity that appears in our site, then we will just shock out together.
All right, well, very interesting because you really are clutch in those team fights, and that's beautiful to watch. Now, about PSG, I feel like they're one of the big surprises at MSI so far. Would you say that they're a top 3 team right now?
因为感觉 PSG 现在也是给了很多人一个像惊喜这样的一个表现嘛，你会觉得他们现在是前3的这样的一个队伍吗？
我觉得他们是有前3实力的。
I think they're definitely one of the top 3 teams.
All right, well, what makes them so strong according to you?
你觉得他们是为什么这么强呢？他们的一个长处在哪里？
其实一开始他们的比赛也是前期打得好，然后中后期就处理不是很好，导致结束不了游戏嘛。然后这2天的话，他们的中后期也做得好一点了，所以的话就看起来有个蜕变一样。
So as for PSG Talent's game, they used to have a very clean early game, but it seemed like they can't close up the game pretty clean after the mid game to the late game. So they had the better execution in the mid to late game today, several in these current days. So they had a better performance compared to before.
Oh, it's going to be interesting when you come to this best of 5 stage, which leads to my last question, Cryin. You just qualified to the knockout stage. You're going to play semifinals. I want to know, this is your first international event. How has it been for you? And yeah, what are your hopes for the rest of the tournament?
那现在其实也是刚刚的成功的进入到了这个淘汰赛环节嘛，就是要马上进行BO5的这样的一个对决了，这也是你的第一个国际赛事，所以你自己的一个期望会是什么样子的呢？
我就希望自己打得好一点嘛，然后不要那个拖累队伍就行。
I hope that I can perform better and not to drag my team down and be the better player for my team.
It is a team effort, and you've all been amazing so far. But congrats on reaching the knockout stage, Cryin. Sheshe for the interview, and Iris, thank you very much for the translation.
Thank you very much, Laure. Cryin just like, oh, I really hope I don't drag my team down. Yeah, it just shows how much pressure is on these players to perform, especially for an RNG in their search for international success. And now they're up versus Damwon once again. Now, Wolf, this was the opening game of the Rumble stage where Damwon actually had an early game lead, but RNG managed to outfight them. How have they evolved from this point?
I mean, we saw at the early part of this tournament and as well as the early part of the Rumble stage, a lot of positional mistakes from Damwon Kia. I mean, this was a weird game in general. The draft had a very bad damage profile for Damwon Kia, but I don't think that was really the reason why they ended up falling behind in the later game. It was just small positioning errors, and Khan kept trying to fix those mistakes. You could see in that clip and in this clip here as well that he's trying to peel. He allows his team to get the objective, but he dies for it, and they end up losing too. Just some big errors in positioning and not actually respecting RNG's power at this late stage of the game means you end up falling behind. And I feel like Damwon Kia have shown a lot more respect, especially in their games yesterday of the late game team fights where they need to stand. You know, in the LCK, they always had vision advantages. They always were winning lane, but this tournament hasn't been so cut and dry. So I think it's taken them a little bit longer to kind of bounce back towards greatness, if that makes sense. I feel like they're going back to great form that we saw from them domestically. And that's the kind of thing that we need to see from them going forward. And in that rematch today, if they could show that discipline once again, I think they've got a good chance of taking it.
Yeah, I think that's a great read. Discipline and kind of setting up for the objectives, which usually is something that they do very, very well. Now, one player I think that's been playing out of his mind, even in the haphazard games from Damwon, has been Showmaker.
Yeah, I think that he as a player is someone that has come up clutch for the team throughout this tournament. And I think that in particular his pick onto the Zoe. We talked a little bit about it in the meta discussion, and I think that Damwon, as the tournament has gone on, has kind of gone back to what works really well for them, and Showmaker Zoe is definitely what works very well for them. This champion is not only perfect for Showmaker, but I think Showmaker is just one of, if not the best Zoe players in the world. He is just so impressive. He always has an impact on it. He goes from Showmaker to Playmaker just like at the click of the finger, and he's just such an impressive and a joy to watch. So I think that their return to picking champions that really suit them, that they're comfortable on, is a large part as to why we're seeing a much cleaner Damwon the further the tournament we go.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that Showmaker, actually, it's his most played champion in his career, actually, the Zoe, just over the Syndra, which he's very famous for playing, especially if you're an LCK fan recently, because he played so much Syndra earlier on this year. But it's a champion he's very, very experienced on, a champion he really likes to play. And it's kind of a comfort pick for him, honestly. So the fact that they're finding so much success with it right now, this late into the tournament, might be just because they wanted to kind of save it for later on, but it's working very well. And I think teams should maybe even consider dropping a ban on it, especially once we go to those best of fives. If you're struggling there, you might want to think about removing it.
Yeah, I think that's true, especially also the zone control that he can bring with that Zoe. And quietly, I think, stepping up as the best mid in the tournament so far. Let's talk about their opponents in RNG and how they have evolved, Vedius. I feel like in the beginning, when they were undefeated, it was all about, well, even if you're ahead in those games versus RNG, they clutch it out. They play the macro game. But it almost seems like they have relied a bit too much on that clutch factor late game and not focused enough on the mid game?
I don't know if I fully agree with that. I think that for me, RNG have tried to play a wealth of different styles. Yeah. And I think that one of the biggest things is that Wei is a very different jungler to Canyon, in that Canyon plays a little bit more selfishly for himself, the team plays more for him, whereas Wei plays a lot more for his laners. Throughout the domestic regular season of the LPL, he would primarily play through top, and he would get Xiaohu ahead. And I think that as the tournament has progressed, we've been seeing more and more and more of that, as Xiaohu has been more willing to play things like the Jace, like the Lee Sin, and we're seeing these split push games where this is a great example of on your screen right now where the two mid towers are still alive, but look at the side lanes. All of the towers are gone. Cryin is moving into the bot lane, and while this big Cloud Soul objective is up, they're still actually just creating pressure in a side, and this is how RNG, I think, was so strong during the regular season. And while they didn't demonstrate this in playoffs, as we've seen the meta continue to evolve in the tournament, it's something that RNG has really, I think, perfected and has made it so difficult to deal with this team.
Yeah, obnoxious is, I think, the word you used earlier to play against, because even if if you're winning, you feel like you're losing because your towers are going down. I think also from what we've seen from them and their adaptation throughout the playoffs, you know, where first they got beaten by FPX and then they beat them, they are willing to change up their style and bring new things to the table in terms of what their opponent can put on the Rift. So I want to focus on a couple of specific lanes as we get closer to this matchup. And I want to start by the bot lane, Wolf. Ghost and Beryl, they have been phenomenal performance if you look at the whole history of Damwon, but maybe they have been a bit quieter at the beginning of this tournament.
They certainly have. I mean, Ghost is the type of player who often just kind of does okay in lane and then really has star performances later on in the game once he scales up. And usually Damwon is ahead at that stage of the game. So he looks really good. It's really easy to recover. But in this meta, it's a little bit harder, I feel like, to actually just kind of quietly play it back and then eventually scale later on into the game because it's such a tempo-based meta right now. And I do feel like Gala has better laning so far. And it's put a lot of extra pressure on Beryl as well down on the bottom side of the map.
I would definitely agree with that. For me, one of the big things about these two laners in particular is that, like, I consider them the backup carries in that they are just so consistent in very different ways. I think Gala is a little bit more aggressive. He's a little bit more of the highlight reels. When RNG is starting to collapse, he in the team fight comes up clutch. Whereas I think Ghost is just this consistent, reliable AD carry that even if he doesn't have the best laning, he's never really the reason why your team loses. He's never making mistakes. I can never sit there and think of a situation where Ghost is part of the why Damwon falls short. And so I just think that highlighting them as like really reliable and really important to their team's success is really important in this matchup, because when you have so much variability in the form of Xiaohu, potentially of Khan, in the mid laners as well, these two are the two that you're going to look at to come out clutch when it matters most.
I agree, and I would never, of course, say that supports are more important than AD carries or marksmen, but honestly, the supports have been super important this tournament and in this meta, Wolf, specifically as if you look at Beryl and Ming and how they thrive not only in lane, but specifically in roaming early and mid.
Yeah, and I feel like this is very much a support meta. It's been something we've been discussing throughout this tournament, but I think the supports are very, very important in the late game. And there's been so much more pressure on Beryl in lane this tournament that he hasn't been able to roam as much as he usually does, because both of these supports actually really like roaming, especially domestically. And we've seen Ming find much better success in setting up team fights. And I think part of that actually goes back to what Vedius was saying about the side lane pressure. When you have so much side lane pressure, Ming is always there to catch those who try to rotate to deal with it. He's always there to set up for an initial pick. He'll get the hook first. He'll get that Zenith Blade. So he's a very terrifying player to play against. And Beryl had a really shaky start to the tournament. He got caught often trying to make those risky plays. And this isn't just, you know, your average day of LCK, right? This is an international tournament with top tier talent across the board. And I feel like he has improved a lot in that discipline I've been talking about. But right now, I kind of have to give the edge to Ming.
Oh, okay. We'll see how that plays out in the game. RNG, of course, holds the head-to-head for now. It is time for the final chapter in this Rumble rivalry. Let's get into the action.
Welcome back, esports fans, to MSI 2021. Damwon Kia know exactly how much they crushed that game.
만만한 팀이 하나도 없는 것 같아요. 이제 실제 경기에서도 저희가 7승 1패지만 그 과정 속에서는 쉬운 7승이 아니었기 때문에
There's something about Damwon. You just feel pressured on every single wave, and it feels different to play against Damwon than to play against other teams.
Double, make it happen. There's your equalizer. Triple double for Damwon Kia.
我觉得就是现在因为输了2把嘛，因为但是我们打的都是本来预测是在 MSI 1、2名的队伍嘛，所以我们输了也不会太气馁。
There's nothing you can do. RNG are your nightmare.
既然就是都进了4强了吧，就希望可以再走得更远一点，想遇见 C9 吧，想复仇。
They will take down the LPL and they will continue to give hope to every LCS fan out there.
Pentanet is not looking for dessert. They send Fudge home.
I was calling the whole time, the whole tournament, that there is no way PGG goes 0-10. They're gonna have to win against somebody. Well, it's not be us, but it was us in the end.
I like the boys over at C9, so it is a bit sad that we've copped this loss.
In theory, mathematically, we can still make it out tomorrow. So there is that, I guess.
I don't think they will make it because they will just stomp them like last time. I think it's gonna be us for sure. The difference will be that we are just better.